I've lived in Bulgaria for a total of 8 years, but over the course of 10 years. So actually I just hit the 10-year anniversary of the first time I came to live here. It's gotten to the point where sometimes talking with my Bulgarian friends, we can kind of laugh and joke about, oh man, do you remember how this used to be? Like back when that was like this and this was, so I've been here long enough to kind of be nostalgic about the old days, which feels funny, but. Well, what originally brought me to Bulgaria was history. I was a specialist in Bulgarian history, and so I came here 10 years ago to spend a year at the American University in Bulgaria. And then when I came back the next time, it was to do research with the Fulbright grant. So what made me come was history, but then what kind of made me stay was all the other things I do here, because I decided not to be an academic. And so what made me stay was basically that I had tons of other things I could do. And so these days it's like I'm an actor somehow. You know, I star in commercials and sometimes TV shows and things. I do voice acting and voiceover work. I make a podcast about Bulgarian history. I do sales and marketing and kind of occasional kind of business consulting kind of stuff. That really gets to something. That's the question of like, what do I do here? To me, Bulgaria is a place where there's so many interesting folks and cool businesses and opportunities. And so I tend to be constantly working on new projects. And those projects have taken me, again, to like acting in American TV shows, to like interviewing entrepreneurs in Kenya. And that's all to, all that kind of came from my Bulgarian contacts. So I do like a little bit of everything. It's always a long answer, but I think Sofia is a good place to do a little bit of everything. Well, so interestingly enough, I originally found out anything about Bulgaria from a girlfriend when I was in high school. Now, she was not Bulgarian, but she was American, and her family was in NATO. So they had been stationed in Sofia for a few years. She told me about Bulgaria and introduced me to some of her Bulgarian friends on like AOL Instant Messenger chat. So I started kind of talking to some Bulgarians, and she was telling me about what it was like to live there. I mean, this would have been in like even before Bulgaria joined the EU. And then from there, she also gave me a book, this book, Crown of Thorns by Stefan Groev, the biography of Tsar Boris III. And so then I was like starting to learn some about Bulgarian history. And so by the time I came, I didn't know a ton, but I knew some history, and I knew that it was, I guess kind of a more out of the way place. And I mean, really, what I didn't know is what attracted me, because I was interested in going to a place that I didn't just kind of know all the things. You never know all the things, but I wasn't so familiar with. And also a place that was affordable. I mean, I came here as a student, and so, studying abroad in the UK or something, it's a little bit expensive. So Bulgaria is also perfect for that. Well, I could say my family and friends were kind of eased into it, because it's not like the first time I came here was to live forever. The first time it was for 1 year, and then the next time I came, it was also supposed to be for 1 year, 7 years later now. But I think that they understood, because, well, at least they said they understood initially, right? I explained that a lot of it was about quality of life. A lot of it was about that I felt like I had so many things I could do here, so many opportunities. Whereas, by the time I made the decision to live in Bulgaria permanently, I had spent 3 of the previous 4 years living in Europe. And so the idea of going back to the US, it was like, I didn't know what I would do, where I would live. It was kind of, a blank spot. Whereas Bulgaria, I knew lots of people. I had tons of things that I thought I could work on. But I think what ultimately really made it for them, and what kind of sold them on it and made them understand, was when they came here for the first time. And my whole family came for 2 weeks. I took them all over the country, and I feel like they got it. They were really impressed. I think like so many people who come to Bulgaria for the first time, they come with little to no expectations. And from the food, the beautiful nature, the history, all these kinds of things, all the people they met, my friends who they met, they kind of came out of it saying, okay, we get why you want to live here. Like there's a good life here. There's a lot for you here. And so even though it's hard, I don't get to see them as much and everything, to me, what made them understand was just coming and seeing everything, meeting the people especially. So now they support it. Now they're totally happy with it. And the only people that ever questioned it were really my grandparents, but they're in their 80s and they don't really get it. And, there's not much you can do about your grandparents. So to me, studying abroad is is a whole different kind of education, because I spent 1 year of my bachelor's abroad in Bulgaria, then I did my master's degree in Budapest at Central European University. So, I spent 2 of the 5 years I spent studying abroad. And I mean, a long time ago, I even tried to write an op-ed about this. And what I found is that people always talk about how when you go to university, there's all these basic skills nobody teaches you, right? They never teach you how to pay taxes or save for retirement or pay your bills, all these kind of basic life skills. And in my mind, when you study abroad, you get that education, but you definitely also get those life skills. If I'm less now, but because it's been many years, but when I was in a job interview, I would talk about my experience living abroad, because in my mind, that taught me problem solving, right? When you're in a country where you don't speak the language and you have to just figure everything out, and particularly when you're not in one of those study abroad programs where they're kind of holding your hand the whole time, everything is very structured and they kind of coddle you and take care of you and things, where it's just, you're basically a student, here you go. And so my experience, particularly in Bulgaria, I went to AUBG and I was a regular student like anyone else, that I was not treated any differently, and just kind of figuring everything out. To me, that was exciting, and I feel like I learned a lot. And, depending on where you go, studying abroad can save money. I know, compared to getting my master's abroad and doing that 1 year, I mean, I saved thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars compared to going to my public, in-state, relatively inexpensive by US standards, school in the US. So there was also a big affordability thing that has made a big difference in my life since then. Actually, maybe one other thing I could say about studying abroad, and particularly with my experiences at Central European University and the American University in Bulgaria, is being in incredibly diverse places. Those are 2 universities that don't have a majority. There's no one ethnic or national group that makes up more than half of the population. And so, I think also just studying surrounded by people who are from every conceivable place in the world, it's like a cliche, but it's true. You learn a lot, and it teaches you to kind of be, to maybe run away from your biases and your assumptions. Because if you approach people with, oh, you're from this place, or you're this kind of person, I know, blah, 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 and kind of throw those stereotypes or perceptions on there, you're not going to make a lot of friends, right? You're not going to get so far. And so I feel like it taught me about the world, it taught me about people, it taught me about making connections and the power of those connections. Now my fiance laughs at me because I talk about almost anywhere in the world, oh, I've got a friend there, I know someone there, I know someone there. She's like, how do you know all these people? It's like, well, I studied at 2 very international universities, and so that just kind of comes with it. And that was another nice benefit of studying abroad. It's hard. The funniest phrase in Bulgaria, I mean, there's like my little jokes, that like years ago, I have a Canadian friend and he was just starting to learn some Bulgarian. He's lived here for a while now and is married. And I was thinking, like, what can I teach him in Bulgarian? And then I was like, all right, here's what you're going to say. It doesn't matter who's talking to you, what the context. You could be in a restaurant, you could be talking to a police officer. Just say, hey, znaешь ли And I was like, don't worry, that'll work perfectly until the moment it does not work. And at that point, my apologies. But jokes aside, I mean, I don't know, I'm a fan of like, my favorite word in Bulgarian maybe is užas, because I feel like it's got that oomph. And so I went to a little shop where you could buy little Cyrillic letters and made out of wood. And so I bought ones that said užas. So on my desk, I've got them sitting there, and colleagues would always laugh like, why do you have this? Like, because it's a word with so much feeling. You can really show the world how you feel with that word. Yeah, so of course, 8 years in Bulgaria, people have asked me about a million times, like, what are you, insane? Like, why would you live in Bulgaria if you had the chance to live in the US? And, I feel torn about it because, of course, I do love the US, and there's a lot of things I love about it, but to me, what the US just doesn't do that well, it tends to be quality of life stuff. And there are exceptions, but my feeling, and I'm from Washington, D.C., and from an area where people tend to work a lot, and it's a very intense place, and people are very work focused. And I know, for example, my brother is a financial analyst, and he faces this challenge that he's got a good job, works hard, and he wants to advance in his career and everything, but he also wants to work fewer than like 60 hours a week. And it can be really hard to do that. And when I'm in the US and I talk to my American friends, I say, come visit me in Bulgaria. And they say, ooh, yeah, it's really, really hard to like take a week off. And the idea that, over the course of like a whole year period, the idea of taking 1 week off is like, it's such a difficult thing. And I see that mentality that I grew up around. I grew up with my father sometimes working 90 hours a week. That was pretty normal. And I came out of that saying like, that's not a life. And to me, even though I still have that workaholic kind of culture that the US instilled in me, Bulgaria is a place where I feel like you can, work normal 40 hours a week, and you can go to the mountains and go skiing and go to the beach, and you can have time off, and it's easy to get out into nature. It's just a lot easier to have that balance and that quality of life. And, having experienced a kind of childhood surrounded by people who I don't feel like had that balance and that quality of life. It's something that I think is really underrated and something that is just incredibly, incredibly precious. And while I understand, for a lot of Bulgarians, depending on the type of work that you do, it can be incredibly hard to earn, any salary. The lowest salaries here are appalling, and it's insane that what they'll pay someone with a degree in something, even. But I'm not telling, those people should know better and they should have a better life here and everything. But I feel like if you can figure it out, if you can figure out, for example, how to do work that's international, right? Do something online that doesn't matter where you're based and things. If you can find a way to earn a decent living here, and I think there's a lot of ways to do it, your quality of life can be dramatically better than if you were based in a place like the United States. But, that's just me. I guess that's kind of how. Actually, there's one other thing I think to mention. Maybe the other thing that I think is important, and it's also important for me, how I think about quality of life is feeling like my life has some impact and some meaning in what I'm doing. And even though, of course, Bulgarians love to talk about just like nothing here ever changes, nobody cares, right? There's that whole mentalitet here, right? But I think compared to Washington, D.C., I feel like it's so much easier to have an impact and to change something here. I have a joke that I tell after living here for years. It's like, the best thing about Bulgaria is that nobody cares. And the worst thing about Bulgaria is that nobody cares. And so, yeah, sometimes there can be this kind of whatever, like nothing's going to change, nothing's going to happen. But very often, if you really want to change something, you want to get out there and do it. Whereas in the US, there's a lot of, yeah, but you should do this, yeah, but it should be done this way, there's this rule, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. In Bulgaria, very often it's like, sure, whatever, nobody cares, like, do it. Why would it bother anyone? And, sometimes this can be really liberating. And for me, living here, I always try to remember those are two sides of the same coin, right? Every time you're frustrated because, nobody seems to care, this is actually important, why can't I get anyone to care? You remind yourself that that's the flip side of that same mentality that lets you kind of just do what you want and start a new thing so easily. And so I think there's also that difference, and approaching it is a lot about having the right mentality and having the right kind of perspective. That makes it a lot easier to live here and to succeed and to enjoy yourself. So I've lived abroad for 9 years, and it's funny because I feel like when I first came here, nothing really, things surprised me, like even just windows that could open two ways. I've never seen those in the United States. And the first time I saw someone close a window, flip the thing and open it that way, I was like, what just happened? But I feel like coming here, I expected things to be different. So every time something was different, it was like, okay, yeah, it's different. I'm in a different country. What shocks me more is actually the reverse culture shock. It's when I go back to, say, the United States, then things really shock me. And it's all these things that I grew up were normal, but now that I've lived here, they seem very bizarre. Of course, the type of food people eat, the quantity of food people eat, the things, people talking about buying stuff all the time. It seems like that's a very common topic of conversation in the US. There's all these little things that are just weird to me now. Positive and negative. When I'm in the US, it's always weird when a server comes and asks, how is everything? I'm used to this, like, servers leave me alone, again, for better and for worse. It's like, no one will bother you, but if you need to get their attention, good luck. So that same flip side. But as far as like stuff in Bulgaria, I think like whether it's positive or negative at this point, it's just like, yeah, that seems about right. I don't let things really shock me too much.